welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, and welcome to the Turn the Page podcast, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library. I am Meghan, one of the children's librarians here, and I'm so happy that we have our special guest today, author Laura Harms, author of the middle grade book, The AFTERTIME, which is an historical fiction book set across many different timelines about the Monacan tribe in America. And I just love this book so much, Laura, and I can't wait to hear what inspired you to write this book.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Actually, what inspired me was several years ago, I was in the car with my youngest son, and he looked at me and said, "What if you had a weapon that had the power to heal if it was never used in anger?" And I had to try not to run off the road because he was a very young child. And that question really stuck with me over the years. And this weapon in the book is in the form of a knife. Mm-hmm. And it's passed down, it originates in the 1700s between a Monacan boy and an English boy in Western Virginia near Charlottesville. And the knife is handed down throughout the generations in this one family. I just like this concept of, we all have this weapon inside of us, and, how do we use it? Do we use it for healing, or do we use it for retribution? And I think it's something that especially middle schoolers, they struggle with that because they're growing and they're having to deal with all different new emotions and things going on in their lives. And it's just something that I thought was very relevant, especially since I have two boys. I have three children, but the two boys that I have, this was something that close to home.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a lot of middle grade kids and even people of all ages could connect to this book. I found I really enjoyed the timeline aspect because we go back in time from an historical perspective. We go back to the 1700s, pre-American founding history, and we see some of the battles and different things. And then we go to present day and we see a lot of the same problems and struggles that the characters have. It's just a different time. So it's like this theme of connecting through the generations and what are the struggles that we still have. And that knife, that is a symbol. And it's also an element of magical realism, which I always appreciate in books because it's a good way of symbolism of representing struggle, and also like, is it a physical weapon and how does that relate to words and harsh things that people are saying? Because the Monacan boy who's featured,
Jack, the Monacan boy,
the Monacan boy that's featured in the book, his friend in the book, the friend, like the family doesn't accept him in the past.
Yeah. Well, Jack, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Jack is in the present day.
Right, yes.
And then Corwin is...
Corwin, that's what I meant.
That's the answer. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. Yeah, exactly. They're not accepted, and there's a specific reason that the family has not been able to leave. And so this young boy sort of is forced to go out and provide for the family, and he's lonely.
Right.
He has no friends. And then he meets this English boy, Nathan, who becomes his only friend. And it's this friendship that sort of infused this knife with this power.
Right. And it has that power. Yeah. And then in the present day time with Jack, he faces bullies in the town.
Well, yeah, Jack is Corwin's descendant, and then there is Zach, who is Nathan's descendant, and Zach is the one that he faces bullies, but Jack is much more confident in dealing with bullies. Yes. He faces them and he's able to move on. Whereas Zach, I imagine Zach, imagine him walking up steps. He's mid-step. he can't quite go to that next level of becoming more mature
Mhm.
and more of an adult. He's sort of stuck still being that little kid when it's really, he needs to mature, he needs to grow up, and he's just sort of fighting this. And he's fighting the fact that he doesn't want his older brother
Yeah,
helping him, but when he needs him, he's wondering where he is, even though he's
right.
been pushing him away and pushing
Yeah,
him away. So it's that maturity level
yeah,
of trying to take that step and really being an active part of your family, more than just doing the dishes or doing the laundry. It's like being there emotionally, even as a child, being kind to your family.
yes. And his older brother, it's described early on as more of an imposing figure than
Mhm.
him. He's built strong and he's tall, and there's only a few years age difference. His older brother's Wyman,
Yeah.
and
Wyman means protector. That's why I picked it.
yeah,
But yeah.
that name, yeah, it was more of an unusual
Mhm.
name. So I was wondering how you had got the inspiration for that. So he's very protective, but then also like I get what you mean with Zach. He's trying to push himself to be
Mhm.
more, and like he's in that age where he's just, and I thought that that was really realistic. Siblings of being the protector,
Mhm.
but also looking out, but then the other younger sibling having little,
Yeah.
there's a little
Yeah.
tension there. Yeah, I thought that that was something a lot of kids and adults could relate to, that was really realistic. How did you
Yeah.
do all your research for this story? Because there's so much historical context.
There's a wonderful book. It's for adults. It's by Jeffrey Hansman. It's called Monacan Millennium, and
Oh,
he was a professor at UVA, University of Virginia, and it was really helpful in finding some of the smaller details. Some of the stuff, my family is from Virginia, North Carolina and
oh,
Virginia.
yes, yeah.
So, yeah, some of the battles I knew about. I'd been raised knowing about the Battle of Great Bridge and some of these smaller battles that not a lot of people know about. But his book, it really helped fill in a lot of pieces regarding the Monacans because not a lot of people know about them. They're not part of the Algonquin Confederacy or the tribes.
Right. Yes.
They are Sioux. They came from the West
Okay.
at
Yes.
about 1000 AD. So there was always this friction between the Monacan and then the Algonquin tribes in Virginia. And they just, the perseverance that I found regarding this tribe was just amazing. They basically, many of them either went north or went back west, but some of them stayed and ended up going to Bear Mountain
Oh,
and
wow.
staying. And it was about 700 of them that just stayed. They would not leave even through the 30s when Virginia had some horrible, basically, there were blood purity laws where if you were anything but white, you basically, you didn't have access to education, getting a house, getting a car. And it was a way of trying to push a lot of these different tribes and different people out. And they persisted, they stayed. And I'm just really in awe of how they love this place so much. It's their land. It was their land for so long. And I hope that it comes off in the book. It's very unnerving when you're having to write about another ethnicity, another ethnic group that isn't your own. And so there was a lot of research and a lot of talking to the museum director for the
Mhm.
Monacans, hoping that I was respectful to their culture.
And you could definitely see that in the book. You even say in the beginning of the book, before it even starts, like in the pre-writing, that you got permission to use
Mhm.
any words. There were only 2 or 3 words. I think that you had
Just the one word.
one word. Yes.
It's 2 words, but it's said as 1 word. I won't repeat it because I feel like it would be inappropriate
Right.
because for so long they weren't allowed to speak their language. It was lost,
Oh, yeah.
much of it. And so a lot of the smaller tribes on the East Coast, their languages are lost, but the Monacans, they hired a linguist to come in and help them rediscover, and they're teaching the tribal members. And I just feel that if you go to all that work to try to rediscover your language, rediscover your songs, rediscover your stories, your words, it's not only time consuming, there's a cost, an actual cost to hiring people to do this. And then for a writer to come along and just pick these words and use them in a book or a movie or a TV show, I think is inappropriate.
Right.
That we really should, and especially the names.
Yeah.
So,
And the names too. No, I really appreciate your respect for that. It shows how much you care for the culture and how careful you were at writing this book. I think it comes off as just very respectful. And a lot of people don't know about the Monacan tribe. And I love that this was such a unique book because we learned so much about it. You had brought up the Battle of Great Bridge and how your family knew you being in Virginia, you knew of these lesser battles. Could you tell me a little bit more about why you decided to feature that in the book? Because I thought it was a really interesting.
there's something specific, but
Right.
I don't want to go into too
No,
much detail because I don't want it to give anything away. But
I understand. Yeah.
there was something, it was at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, and
Yes.
it led to a story going in a very
Yes.
different direction than what was planned, what the
Yes.
characters were envisioning. And so that's really why I put it in. And I don't want to go into too much.
No, that's yeah.
Too much detail.
No, I just thought it was a great point of change in the book, and it really developed a lot for the story. And I thought it was a big hook for the readers. And you just do such a great job at introducing so many interesting characters. And you weave in these timelines of the characters are descendants of each other, and they have aspects from their predecessors. And can you talk a little bit more about that, of why you decided to write over several timelines?
I wanted it because I wanted this concept of this weapon of never being used in anger, and it's handed down like someone's eye color or their hair color being handed down through a family. And I thought that was really the only way to sort of show the magnitude of the power that this knife had. And it's really something that we hold in each of us, and it's really, which hand are you going to use this weapon with? Again, is it going to be the hand that's going to heal, or is it going to be the hand that's going to harm? So I didn't feel like if it was just all in present day or all currently happening, that it wouldn't have the magnitude of it being respected while it was being handed down.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And like there's so much symbolism that I really appreciated in this book. And even in your title, what came up with you for the inspiration for the title, The Aftertime?
So, have you ever heard the ancient riddle? I know you have. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? It's a person. They're a baby in the morning, and an adult, and then an elderly person. And I liked this concept of the morning, the afternoon, the evening, the aftertime. And the aftertime it's not heaven, it's not purgatory, it's just this place where a character is. This character comes into these different times in these people's lives, and they're a guide. And, if the person that's alive can be guided into this aftertime and shown various things that they need help with in their life, things that are going on. But that's how that came about.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. Yeah, because it's just such an interesting word and title. And that's what I thought of as just a time existing, you just said, and like these connections that are made. And I thought it was just so cool how you connected the characters to scenes, to descendants and scenes. Like, I don't want to go into too many details about things, but some of the background, like how you use the dialogue to connect the characters. And there is this underlining like magical realism that connects things together too. And that symbolized through the knife also. And this concept of time, like it was really interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like how Zach and Nathan are connected. And that was really central.
Well, Nathan, one of the things that regarding his father, I don't know if you picked up on it, but he was suffering from PTSD because he had been fighting the native tribesmen, and he would go into these frenzies. And just because there wasn't a name for it back then, didn't mean the condition didn't exist. And it was very difficult for the family to understand, what was happening to him. And Nathan, he couldn't understand how his father could just
Right.
become completely unhinged.
Right.
When Corwin was his friend, he was just another little boy to him,
Right. Yes. He had that innocence of child he hadn't, and his father had experienced that. I knew that there was something off because his rationalization of how he was
Right.
treating Corwin just didn't make sense. But that makes complete sense. And at the time, it would have just been called something else.
Yeah.
But it was just, that was a shame that he had that. So Corwin was just an enemy.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? There was just like no rationalizing in his head. But that was something that was such a common,
Oh, yeah.
at that time there was so much fighting and different things going on. But even in present day, people are discriminated against and prejudiced for people for irrational reasons.
That's funny that you said that. The name of the town,
Right.
Mason's Crossroads, is actually named after my grandson.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And one day, many years ago, this is going to get me upset. We were talking, and I said, "Hey, get your shoes on. We got to go to the store real quick." And he looks down at his feet, and I can tell he's upset. And I said, "Mason, what's wrong?" And he said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes when we go off together, people stare at us, and it makes me feel bad." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, you're white and I'm black, and it really makes me sad when people stare and wonder why I'm with you." And it just broke my heart
Yes.
that this child at such a young age was feeling that from strangers. And so I sat down with him and I said, "I completely believe your feelings. There are people in this world that are going to look at us and not think that we should be a family. And, and I'm not going to say, don't just worry about them. Don't ignore, don't, because that's sort of denying your feelings." I said, "But on the other hand, if you stay at home, you're denying a memory that we might have together."
Right. Yeah.
And I said these words, I said, "Mason, you're really at a crossroads, and it's hard because you're so young." And I said, "But you know what? Why don't we deal with that problem tomorrow?
Right.
Just think about it today. We'll deal about it tomorrow." And I said, "How about you just go to the store with your uncle?" And who was a teenager. And so he was very excited about being able to go to the store with his uncle. That was completely different. But, and apparently his uncle Chris listens to better music than Lala does. But, you're right about that's
Oh, yeah.
how the title came about, was him feeling this prejudice from other people staring at us. Sorry, I think we went a little deep here.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get so deep.
I tend to I always sense this symbolism and things from books. I always can kind of discover on a deeper level. And it's just, I thought that was so profound to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people of all ages can connect because there's prejudice that's always going to be there and there's bad people out there, but we can all connect together. And you can't deny that this is going on, but you have to find this is part of growing up too.
Yeah.
And the loss of innocence, that there's going to be bad people out there. There's going to be people that are just going to have prejudice, but there's plenty of good people too. And you can.
Yeah, people just forget that we belong to like a societal ecosystem, that we have to be balanced, just like we have to be balanced in nature. Everything is reliant. And so all of our cultures and our beliefs and everything, I just firmly believe that we can overcome the prejudice that's out there. I know that it's part of human nature and I know that it will always be here, but I'm very hopeful that, hopefully as my grandson and granddaughters get older, people won't feel the need to stare when we're out as a family.
Reach maybe a time after this, like an after time where there's
exactly.
kind of
exactly.
in like a perfect world where this doesn't, that's our, pinnacle of what we can reach, and and what was talking back to the symbolism in the story, I don't want to talk too into detail, but deer, where did that come from? Because I find, deer to be such they have this innocence, but they're part of nature and how we're talking about that.
It was between the deer and the mountain lion.
Yes, yes,
They were, one you think of as this, and you're right, this
yes,
beauty, powerful,
yes,
and then you have one that's like the other side of the weapon. It's this, the mountain lion is forceful.
right,
It can harm you, but whereas the deer can kind of
right.
protect
I
you.
see. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where that came from.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was just like a really profound scene. I can't go into detail, but it was just like how you connected that and
I was wondering how we were going to talk about some of the stuff because you can't really go into a lot of the symbolism, and you can't because you will
yeah.
give away so
No,
much
just
of the
like just
podcast.
talking about in general, like just
Yeah.
how you came up with these symbols and like it's just interesting, but that makes complete sense to having that dichotomy of the innocent and then like the force with the two animals in nature like that. I think we touched on this briefly, but what do you want readers to get out of this book?
Again, I think especially today,
Yes.
just because you can say something doesn't necessarily mean you should, and that words can be weapons.
Yes.
And especially with kids, I have so much empathy for kids today because there is bullying in their life. It's when they're in school, it's face to face,
Mhm.
and used to, like, I was bullied as a child, but when I would go home, I would have a respite from it. But today, kids, they may be bullied at school and then they go home and then there's social media where it continues to take place. And now we see it, adults doing it.
Yes.
And it's, the name calling and just the whole thing in general. I hope that people will take away from it, which hand do you hold this weapon in? Again, how are you going to use this power that you have inside of you?
Right, because it's just not something that just it's in childhood. It
It-
continues into
it's
adulthood. It definitely does that. You bring that up is really important that it does continue. And why do
Yeah.
we let it continue? And like you said, is this power, is our words any less than weapons in a sense?
Mhm.
They can be just as harmful. So
And our
yeah,
actions,
exactly.
you
Yes.
know, and Zach finds that out, that it's his words and actions that really start this whole process going very early in the beginning. Things that he says and does, it starts a lot of things happening. I don't know,
No, definitely. There's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the start for a lot of things that happen in the book. Even though it's hard to speak in detail, I think there's just so much to discuss with this book that you can discuss with children and you can, like in adults. I feel like if I had this conversation with friends about this book, they would equally be interested to learn about the Monacan tribe and, how you told the story and
That's another thing is I think that too often, especially on the East Coast, we seem to forget about the smaller tribes. We
yeah,
always think of it out west, and we don't realize that there's this wealth of culture and history and religion that's still associated here on the East Coast. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to use one of these tribes, because I just feel like sometimes they're just lost and forgotten.
yeah. It's like we have so many names of Long Island that are
Yeah. Mhm.
the tribe, with like Syosset is a tribe. I don't
Mhm.
know which tribe came up with that, but there's so many names on Long Island for different things, especially in Suffolk. We're kind of on the Suffolk border, and there's so
Yeah.
much like even like sacred ground here. There's,
Mhm.
stories of how this was sacred ground to people that lived here, different tribes that were here. And we do forget that history. And I think we should make an effort to learn about our past
Well,
more, I think. Yes.
that was one of the things also, is I wanted children or middle schoolers to, when they read it, if they can't visit the Monacans, if they can't go to the museum, that there is a tribe near them, that they take the time to go and learn about a local tribe that may be in the area and go and visit and learn more about them.
Yeah, because we don't want over time things to get lost. We want to keep passing down
Yeah.
information to learn about all these different tribes and things. And it's like for, ways for kids to learn that maybe aren't part of the culture to learn, that
Mhm.
it's a good thing to learn about our culture. And these are people that were living here before they were, and how they lived and they
Yeah.
had families, things, struggles and things that were central to them, how they have struggles, and
And I also think it's good for people to get another point of view of history,
oh, definitely. Yes,
and not
absolutely.
just the Jamestown version of things,
Yes.
it's very good to hear these different tribes
Oh, definitely.
and what's been the oral tradition handed down.
Exactly. Yeah, we need to read history from perspectives of
Hmm.
different people that were living here at the time. And it's important, and I feel like kids, adults, all ages who enjoy historical fiction, you put so much research into this. There was so much effort and care that was taken to. You just didn't write this just to write it for entertainment, is what I'm meaning to
Thank
say.
you.
Like, it's a very entertaining and hooks you in story, but it was done with such care. And I feel like it really hooks you, especially like midway through the book once all the characters are established. And I can't go into too much detail, but yeah, but that's the thing. But I still think we were able to discuss a lot.
Yeah. I hope parents read it as well. I hope that they read
Yes.
it and then it can talk more about it with,
Yeah. I would definitely give
children.
parents conversations to have with their
Mhm.
kids, even book discussions in libraries. This would be a great book too, and in schools. It's
Oh, thank you.
it's important. Yeah. And I think it opens up for a lot of discussion. We've been able to discuss a lot, even not going into too much detail. In closing, like, I guess we discussed, like, what would you just like to tell readers about this story and when it's coming out for publication?
The release date is August 13th. And I hope that you're able to, again, just maybe reflect.
Yes.
Just take the time for just a moment to reflect on your words and your actions before you say them, before you do them, and realize this effect sort of trickles down through history.
Yes. I can't wait for the release date, and I'm definitely going to recommend it.
Oh, thank you.
My friends and the kids coming in because, we have a really big, strong reader base here. And I know the kids here would really enjoy this book, and the adults too. I'm going to definitely recommend it. It was so nice discussing this book with you today.
Thank you.
Really discussed a lot. This concludes this chapter of Turn the Page, and it was a wonderful experience talking with our special guest, author Laura Harms, about her new book, The Aftertime, and the publication date is August 13th. So keep an eye out on that publication date. And this concludes our podcast today.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.